Well, hello everyone and welcome. We're so glad you're here to explore the world of enterprise service management. With InvGate and Curated Automation, our teams are truly excited, we're enthused, and we're so happy you decided to spend a few moments with us today. So with that being said, let me quickly introduce myself here. Really quick, I'm Lee Cage Jr. I've spent almost 2 decades in the United States Army, over a decade in technology consulting and large-scale enterprise technology implementations. That's a mouthful, I know. But my expertise lie in leveraging technology to empower people to drive efficiency, whether it's a small team or a large team. This deep love of technology, at least for me, it's really how we activate and change the way that enterprises work. At Curated Automation, we specialize in delivering a tailored solution that enhances collaboration and performance. And I'm joined by my good friend and buddy and colleague, Matt.
Thanks,
Matt,
thanks for having me here, Lee. It's good to see you, man.
you as well. Matt, do you want to quickly introduce yourself as well?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I've spent about 20 years in the service management industry, from help desk roles into consulting roles, and one of the places where I hit ESM the most often was in those consulting roles. We would have customers that would come in and they would want to evolve some service management function, whether it be in IT or HR, and inevitably they would want to cross pollinate. They would see the success from one department and want to populate that in their other departments. So obviously, we got to we got a ton of different experience doing that and overcoming a lot of challenges. So I'm really excited to share what I've learned and kind of give away that consulting goodness.
Oh, I love that. Let's hop in here, will we? So let's talk about today's agenda. I like to think of it kind of like a road trip, if you will. We're going to make our way through 6 key stops along the way. First, we're going to map out the role of technology and approach in creating smooth and meaningful unified experiences. Think of this as building the perfect route, for your stress-free drive. Next, we'll take a detour into how ESM works and why it's your GPS for success. And then we'll continue down the path and highlight key considerations you want to keep in mind as you embark on your journey with ESM. Then we'll make a pit stop. This is probably in the Chicago area, where we'll navigate through the process of building those seamless, unified journeys that make every trip worthwhile. And then we'll cruise through some success stories, which Matt will cover that, to show you how others have made the journey, what trinkets and things they picked up along the way. And finally, we'll discuss our partnership with InvGate and how they've become really our perfect co-pilot on this road to success. So I like to begin these sessions by asking really a fundamental question. Does your workforce experiences match your consumer experiences? It's simple, I know, but is finding an employee HR policy or ordering a new laptop as easy as it might be to buy a t-shirt on Amazon? Does it take an act of Congress for your team members to log a PC issue or approve a purchase order or track the progress of a question that they had to the internal team? Can they find that knowledge transfer documentation, right? Expectations have changed in organizations. Workers expect and deserve the same seamless experiences that they enjoy outside of work. And so today we're going to dig into this content a little bit more. And I'd like for you to continue to ask yourself, is my organization making things easy or preventing us from focusing on our strategy, mission, and growth?
It's such a good introduction. And I think the first question that comes to people's minds, or at least one of the questions that I challenge people to question, is who are the teams? What are the nomenclatures for your teams? What is their stuff? And how does that stuff get done in your organization? Who are the doers? Because that's really who you need to leverage when you're starting off on one of these projects. And you need to be aware of who holds authority and influence. And in most cases, it's going to be leadership roles. So in most cases, fostering relationships between leaders of these different functions is your primary step. That is your number one goal. If you don't know who your peers are in the other departments, well, that's the perfect place to start this journey. Just take these people out to lunch. You may already know who they are. You might even have conflict with them already, but you owe it to your colleagues and your customers and your company to connect and bond with these other leaders in these other departments, because ultimately you're going to have to work together to improve experiences. One example I've got is in my first help desk role, we had rolled out a service management tool, and facilities came along one day and they said, hey, Matt, I remember Matt Manicotti came up to me and he said, hey, I would like to manage tickets in the same way that you guys manage work. And it opened up a lot of doors for us right away. But what I realized eventually, what happened is our IT team got a facilities question in our ticketing system. And Matt had just asked me for this license. And so instead of, responding to the ticket and saying, hey, you've got to call facilities or email facilities or whatever, I took the opportunity to give him a license, and I just assigned that ticket over to Matt's team, to Matt directly. And that was how ESM was born in that organization. That is how facilities got into our service management tool. That's how we started sharing space in our service management tool in a very organic way. So meet regularly with these people, buy them lunch, find the leaders in other shared service functions, go to happy hour with them, schedule a tea time with them. Whatever it takes to start and form lasting bonds with these people, you need them. And more importantly, you need them on board for enterprise service management as a whole, because the best way to convince people is to not convince them at all, but for it to be their idea, to align with their goals. And the only way you can understand that and get to those is by having a conversation. So let's talk about it. What is ESM? And I love this slide because I kind of burn Forrester a little bit here. I don't want to slam them too hard, but they apparently coined the term. And the term, they defined it as extending IT service management capabilities beyond technology services to address business-centric use cases, managing service demand and supply through a common platform, portal, and service catalog, and speeding up innovation and workflow automation through platform as a service low-code development tooling. This is a great definition of enterprise service management, except that second acronym in there, the second word, IT. And I think that's really where a lot of people hit a stopping block. We think that IT service management is doing a great job, and therefore we think we should spread that through the organization. But we need to take a more humble approach. We need to swallow our pride and understand that service management is a capability that spans our entire organization. We can learn things from HR. We can learn things from facilities. So we need to get away from this inside out thinking. We need to start listening to the others around us and bringing what they know to our service management function, because that really is ours. So I believe that Forrester's heart was in the right place. And at the time, the concept of ESM, when it came out, IT was really starting to realize the value of service management. So the idea is, let's take what every team has learned about service management and apply it more broadly. Let's apply that value across all these shared service functions. And that's what ESM really is. It's service management shared across shared service departments and teams. If we look at ESM from an employee's perspective, this isn't taking what IT does and copying it to the other departments. You can see here, if HR has a ticketing system and IT has a ticketing system and facilities has a ticketing system, quickly you see that every department has its own fiefdom. And if we're all doing the same things, of course, we should combine efforts. So before enterprise service management, each team kind of did this. They would launch another self-service portal, another knowledge base, and another way to measure shared service functions. And this is the trap. I spent loads of time building portals for specific clients in specific departments who I could never convince to combine the departments, to combine efforts. Usually it was IT that was unwilling to give up their real estate, unwilling to give up their fiefdom. And I had one particularly forceful support manager named Marcy. She said specifically in the project on a recorded call, she said, HR cannot be in our portal. And that is completely counterintuitive to organizational goals. That's what I feel anyway. And maybe Marcy knows more than I do, and she probably does because she worked at that organization longer than me. But if we just copy what one department has done, you get people like my client in this case deciding that they need an HR portal, which is short-sighted and not what the customer or the employee wants. They don't want to have to go to an HR portal to go to onboard an employee, and then go to an IT portal and onboard their laptop, and then go to a facilities portal and request their cube or their office or corporate security. Because what happens is once one of these does well and they launch a self-service portal and people are getting what they expect from these shared service functions, they'll come back and they'll say, hey, you were right. We should combine functions. So we built their HR portal, and the number one feedback that they heard was that they wanted that it was better than the IT portal. So the next project was, of course, to combine those portals. It was so frustrating and so wasteful. I wish that Marcy had just taken our advice from the beginning. But the question becomes pretty quickly, oh, and this isn't actually formatted correctly. Can I throw up another slide really quickly? I'll bet I can if I do this just right. Wish me luck here, people. This is ad hoc, on the fly. Hopefully you should see a different slide right now.
We do.
Because you do see it? Do you see the light blue one? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is how I think about structures within an organization. You've got your shared service functions along the top. And then below them, you've got your service management office or service management function. You can call it whatever you want. But they serve across all of these functions so that you get unity between teams. You can combine forces between teams. And then you see service desk. You might even combine some service desks. Imagine an employee has an issue with a system of yours, and they call up the enterprise service desk and they say, hey, my badge isn't working. And they say, oh, that's facilities. They send you to facilities. And then later you find out it actually isn't facilities, it's corporate security. Well, then that enterprise service management desk or service desk is going to then be able to reroute those people based on what they need specifically. So similar to there not being an HR portal or an IT portal, don't have an HR service desk and an IT service desk. Instead, you have an enterprise service desk that can route to those specific functions. So don't get me wrong. You can't literally combine everything because that service desk function, there are specialties, right? Within engineering, within HR, and each of these topics has specialization. But if you think about service desk tier 0 or level 1, that service desk could be across all of your functions. They've got access to the knowledge base. They answer simple, repetitive questions. They reset passwords. And for everything else, they route it to level 2, which is the HR service desk and the IT service desk, and they go to those specializations. So let's use a metaphor to explain the various levels of this. So at the beginning of an organization, when you're starting to mature and you're getting technology up and running and you're getting HR up and running, it's a bit like bartering. You have to know the right people and you have to work pretty hard to get what you need. You need to know Sally in HR and you need to know Kim in IT to get your password reset. You had to find the right person, the person who set up that system, and that still happens at small companies. Like you get the first Basecamp or Dropbox or whatever. It's kind of like living in a completely shadow IT environment. And as you add maturity and you start to standardize a bit, it's more like a farmer's market. The HR department, they've got their own stand. IT's got its own stand, and they're there every week. You can kind of get, you get your HR stuff over here and your IT stuff over here, and you're just walking through this market, getting what you need. You run into a problem or you need more of an ingredient that you just go back to that same stall. They're still there. In this model, you might need to go to a specialty shop though to pick something up, like a missing spice. Or maybe there's no vendors at the farmer's market that sell cookware. Or there's no one giving away recipes. Then, as you grow more complex and your company grows and you continue to add maturity, you start to incorporate supply chains and demand management and streamline delivery. And in this metaphor, each team has their own department or their own aisle in a modern grocery store. So, in a modern grocery store, you can buy pans, you can buy parchment paper and napkins and other items because it's convenient and it's related to cooking or eating as an experience. And there's a lot of efficiency to be gained by getting everything you need in one way. The perfect example is that one cooler. I don't know if your grocery store does this, but mine does. They've got the easy cooler where it's got all the ingredients for tacos. They've got ground meat, ground turkey, lettuce, tomatoes. They've got the spice right there. There's some salsa, some cheese, tortillas, chips. And sometimes they even print out a recipe and it's right there on the cooler. So you pick up everything from there, you pick up your recipe, and you've got everything that you need. And that's kind of what we're headed towards. That's the goal of enterprise service management. So consider when I sent that ticket over to Matt's facility team. We were just growing organically. And it wasn't about being able to route work to the other teams, although that's important. It made us realize that there's a better way to do things, a new paradigm to coordinate work. I know the facilities manager saw the possibilities because it exploded. They started getting more tickets. We started getting more facilities tickets into our service management system. And much like that transition from a farmer's market to a supermarket or grocery store, having everything in a common place, delivered in a common way, provided efficiency, consistency, and availability that scaling service management required. So, how do we get there? What is the transformation? How do we break down silos, break down fiefdoms, and sell it internally? How do we change culture?
Yeah, Matt.
Lee?
Yeah. How do we change culture? I love that. So, I think a portion of how we change culture really starts with our approach to it. When we consult with our customers, we invest an enormous amount of time in the what of the process and the why underneath the process. The depth is based on process. The mindset is really the same. We seek to understand things like, how is this going to impact team members? How is this going to impact the actual process or the policies or directional guidance that a specific team needs to give folks on this new implementation or process? We look at what matters most, not only to the stakeholders, but to the people who are what I like to call boots on the ground, actually getting and being serviced by the solution. And then we think about what data is important in the process, and we seek ways to simplify and ask the questions of why. The truth is, Matt, for many of our customers and clients, this is a career-defining project for them. When you implement, something at an organization, it becomes who you are. It becomes a part of your internal brand, and you become the face of the solution, provided it's a solution and not just a band-aid to an existing problem. So we really go into it from that perspective, looking to accomplish these four things: the strategy, understanding the folks involved, the technology implementation, and then driving adoption as a form of change enablement. And so that brings me to this. Now, I am a little biased because this is my favorite quote. I wrote this quote, but here's the truth. Technology alone is not transformation. Transformation is never about the tools alone. It's about how they are purposefully woven together into the broader strategic framework. When technology isn't aligned with organizational goals or KPIs or employee engagement and process optimization, it ceases to add value and becomes nothing more than an expensive distraction. And that's what we want to avoid. So with that being said, Matt, you talked a lot about the what and the benefits, and really all ESM projects focus on that simplifying the complex and minimizing the friction. especially friction points in the process and gaining visibility, walking into that 2020 or 2025 vision, if you will. And from our perspective, that is utopia. It's really about the improved worker experience. And in our view, we do that by starting with the basics, or what I like to call a basic training. So Matt, I'd love to hear some success stories from you on like maybe clients or customers that have gone through basic training and graduated with that award.
Okay, great. I can definitely do that. While I'm doing that, if you've got questions, don't forget to throw them in the QA section down below. Julia, thank you for sending one in. You can also ask them in chat. Thank you, Christina, for that as well. Here's an example client that needed ESM. They didn't know necessarily that they needed it, but People's Bank they started with us as an IT vendor. So we came in as an IT service management solution. They needed help routing work and just managing work and measuring work. And they were dealing with hesitancy from their user base due to low user satisfaction. So there was low user adoption with the legacy solution. So we came in and we helped them out. We made just a simple portal with an easy to use UI that made it very simple to get what you needed and get out of there. And it started with just a few departments. It just started with like 1 or 2 departments, and it continued to expand because what happened is they started to see the proof. They started to see that IT was improving, and they were experiencing that improvement because of course we need IT, right? We need stuff fixed. And that proof went to the other departments. They started to see what IT was doing, and they said, hey, can we get in on this? You know, we need this in our department, or we need this within our branch. And so you can see how it spreads organically in something like that. When you show that proof, they start to see it. And it was the same with Matt Manicotti in the facilities department. They saw how IT was managing work, and they wanted to do it the same way. I heard a very good story recently from Dr. Josh Nelson from Power Design. He sought an objective way to measure his service, which I think is a challenge in and of itself. But what he did is he found an external auditing company out of England. It's called SDI, and they happen to work with IT service desks. And they have a rating system for IT departments. And you answer all these questions. They audit your processes. They audit your experiences. And their goal was to get to be a 5-star organization. They wanted to be a world-class organization. Now, when they first got the audit, they got a measly 2 stars, but over the next year, when they answered all those audit questions at 2 stars, that kind of showed them where their gaps were. When they were answering the audit questions, they could see clearly what they were going to need to get to the next star level. And so they spent a year just kind of working on the stuff that the audit found, the audit findings, the gaps and the opportunities. And sure enough, the next year they made it to 3 stars. Now, but you remember they're trying for 5 stars. So what SDI does, and I love this, is they make it so that in order to get 5 stars, you have to get 4 stars 2 years in a row, which is a beautiful thing because it not only proves that you can get to that level, but that you can maintain and sustain that level. And so having that, and what happened is they did eventually get to that 5-star level. Actually, they're going to receive the award, I think, at the end of March this year. We'll see him in the UK. And what happened is that proof started to spread. You know, once they had an objective measure of how they were doing, they were able to then mature and get to a level that it was good enough. They needed some guidance along the way, clearly. And once they got there, they started the other departments that had outsourced. They had outsourced some HR functions. They had outsourced some finance functions, and they started to insource them because now they had proof. They had trust. They had hope, and they had an understanding that they could actually deliver something better. Another case study that we've got is a school district. And this is a great example of how ESM can be something that proves the value of service management and then expands. And you can see it in the stats here. They went from 56 types of automated requests to 174. And in this case, this was organic growth. They came in, they were looking for an IT service management solution again, and they had a baseline. They knew the 56 things that they had to do. And eventually, once they got those in, they said, okay, we can do so much more. And so now they've tripled the amount of automated requests that you can do in the system. And you can see it in their agents too. They only had about 550 agents. A massive service desk, actually. I love saying only before that. But then over time, they grew. They started to add users over and over and over until they reached about 1,200 agents. And schools have unique needs too. Much like the fiefdoms of HR and facilities and IT, each building in a school district has different technology, different solutions, different needs, different challenges. But centralized departments all have unique reasons to visit the individual buildings. And so hopefully you can see how collaborating across departments can create some massive efficiency and make good experiences spread. If IT is running to building 3 and HR has a bunch of stuff they have to deliver to building 3, well, send it with the field service agent, you know? Or HR goes to a building and they hear through the grapevine, something's down. Well, they can bring that information back to IT. We can coordinate our efforts and improve experiences at an exponential degree as opposed to a linear degree.
Wow, Matt, thank you so much for that. And I do see some questions coming in the chat, so we're going to move to those here in just a few moments. But I want to kind of bring us back to the place that we started, you know, weaving technology and thinking holistically about stakeholders involved, and really, is your organization designing with the end user in mind? So we asked this question when we started: does your workforce experiences match your consumer experiences? So if you have gotten, you know, to this point and you said yes, kudos to you. Keep doing what you're doing. But if there's some doubt, we want to talk a little bit more about what that might look and feel like, and as well as exploring how we can help you resolve some of that friction. So, you know, as we think about this slide here, this is actually one of my favorite slides, Matt. So thank you for getting us here. But some folks have asked, like, what is the purpose and intent behind this unique thing that you have with InvGate? So here's the truth. We asked that question before, but we find most of our customers truly do say no. They don't have a framework in mind, and we wanted to find a creative way to bring InvGate's technology paired with Curated's approach to implementation. And for us, we think that's the perfect equation because it equals a better experience and more impact within organizations. So in truth, Curated delivers technology-enabled solutions, and InvGate, I believe, has simply the very best technology out there to solve this unique problem. Matt, anything you'd like to talk about on this partnership? I know, like, we've been doing this dance together, and I appreciate you being a good dancing partner.
Yeah, I think what I would add is when we think about service management, it's something that we understand. You know, it's a known thing. And one thing that's really frustrated me recently over the past 10 or 15 years is that the same departments are building the same things. So you're building incident management at one company, and then you go and the next company needs it and you're building the same thing. And I think that's why I love InvGate's approach, actually. We make the complex simple. We know how service management is done, so we don't need to build incident from scratch. We don't need to build service requests from scratch. And I think that's why InvGate is so interesting to me. We think more like a software company. Let's solve this problem. You know, give teams the leverage that they need to build great experiences and to deliver services without having to learn JavaScript and C++ or whatever, you know, React, whatever language du jour there is. But we understand service management. And the idea is that don't give people an open playground to do service management in, because we end up choking ourselves to death. We end up overdoing things. We end up with incident forms that have 4 layers of categorization. We, we end up with change forms that take hours to fill in with attachments that you're adding. No, you can do simple service management. There are ways to do that. And that I think is really what enables some of these teams, right? We want to be able to manage our own work. We don't want HR to have to sit in a queue of application development requests and wait for an app developer to then put it into this service management system. Let HR change their own stuff. Let them change their forms. Let them change their workflows. Let them build those great experiences. Because that way you can do it without massive overhead, without massive capital, without massive external consulting contracts. And that way your ESM teams can be their own internal consultants. They can do the work themselves because they know the work themselves.
I love that, Matt. It's almost like together we become the Tylenol to the pain within organizations. Uh, you mentioned earlier, like our customers don't have to understand all the coding behind it. We've already solved that problem. You don't know when you go to the store and you get Tylenol, you don't see that there's C8, H9, NO2 in the compounds. It exists. But what you know is that when you go forth with this, it provides a solution. It's a pain reliever to friction that you're feeling in your body or that you're feeling in your organization. So I love that. So let's go to some questions here if we could. I see a few in the chat and more coming in. So Matt, I see the first one here is from Julia. So she says, can we just say ESM is a consolidated way to ensure we are meeting the company's goals by working holistically to provide support for services across the organization? Julia, you should be a copywriter. Are you a copywriter? That's an excellent, that is a excellent simplified way of thinking about it. And the fact that this came off of the top of your head, I love that. But yeah, this is a great way to think about ESM at the foundation.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Even if it's not listed in your company's goals, there's always the hidden elements of what is your company's goal. And oftentimes, especially in shared service functions, we're enabling the other departments to do the goals, right? Maybe you've got a sales number that you need to reach. Maybe you've got a new product line you're launching. Well, with a coordinated effort, all those teams can support those goals, right? Make your employee experience better so that your sales team has the right tools, has the time that they need to actually support that new product line or reach that new quota goal that you've got. We sort of forget that every time that we're asking someone to do something with facilities or HR or IT, it's taking time away from their productivity. It's taking time away from our revenue focus.
Yeah,
So a lot of times it doesn't seem like it's a direct impact on company goals, but it definitely is a direct impact on companies' goals.
I love that. Let's see here. The next one is, do you have a playbook in place to assess how to address clients' needs to develop solution offerings? So yes, we do. Matt, you want to take a piece of this and I can bring it up as well?
Yeah, yeah. I think when I think about this, I think about the design lifecycle, which starts with user research and goes into developing a solution, analyzing the ideas within that research, understanding what challenges and gaps are within that research, and then building ideas around that in an agile team. And that agile team needs to include your customers. It needs to include the employees that are subjected to these shared service functions, because then when you go live with this sort of thing, they're going to love it because they built it with you, right? You listened to them, you started to analyze that research, and then you built something together. And then when it goes live, they're proud of it. They'll tell others about it. Lee, what would you add to that?
The only thing that I would add, maybe specifically on the assessing, a portion of the assessment is done prior to the implementation, right? That is like, is this the solution for us? Is this something that we actually need? and going through that needs analysis within the organization. And actually what you may find, as to Matt's point, when you're going through that needs analysis, you might find other things that the solution can actually solve for as well, other pain points. I think the other portion of this assessment happens once you move into the implementation. We have a 5-stage implementation methodology that what we call setup. So from strategy to engineering, from engineering to testing, from testing to unification, from unification to provisioning and deploy. And then there's that hypercare that happens. So a portion of this is we're assessing as you go through our implementation methodology to ensure that it still meets the things that we set up in the beginning, that it still meets your stakeholder needs and desires and your overarching, outcomes. So hopefully that does provide some feedback, good feedback for you there, Kim. Let's go to one from
Wait a
Ash.
second. Wait
Go
a
ahead,
second.
yeah.
I love that answer. I love that because what you highlighted is that you can't just jump to a technology. You shouldn't just jump to a technology. You can just jump to a technology, but you might end up selecting Excel, and you're not going to get the process governance that you require. You're not going to get the checks and balances on what roles can do what. Within Excel, right? So it's going to get messy really quickly. I love what you said, Lee. Understanding how your business functions today helps you pick the right tool tomorrow.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, I go back to my metaphor on the healthcare side of things. We don't just go to the store and pick something. We look at the back of the ingredients. We make sure there's nothing in there that we are allergic to, right? So is your organization allergic to things that the system has? Well, likely not, but we want to make sure, right? Will this really solve the problem that you have? Or is there some internal discovery that you need to do to be prepared for this type of change? Because going back to my quote earlier, moving something from Excel to this system, a lock and shift, that's not transformation. It's more than the technology alone.
And speaking of technology, our next question is about that, Kim. Kim Foken says, you mentioned developing portals for your clients. Are you using industry standard solutions, e.g. ServiceNow, to meet client needs, or are you building custom solutions? And I think you kind of answered that pretty well last time, Lee, that you can use whatever solution you want, whatever solution you can afford. But the key is understanding the constraints. And I do this all the time now when I see a product that I don't like or an experience I don't like. Instead of saying, oh, this is designed poorly, this is a bad product, this is a bad experience, I get curious and I say, what are the constraints that led to this situation? You know, in the case, like she mentioned ServiceNow, if you need an ERP system, if you've got 36 developers working on a system, sure, ServiceNow is going to do it for you. They are a great ERP solution. They're taking Oracle and Salesforce's business every day. But most people don't actually need that. Most IT departments and HR departments don't want to understand what makes a good user interface, what makes a great user portal. Sure, your application development team might care about that with your custom applications and that sort of thing. But you need to source that information. You need to source that work out to your vendors. You know, find a vendor that you can trust to build a great service management solution without you having to design it all from scratch and build it all from scratch, because that stuff gets expensive fast. And if you look at the design lifecycle, we start with user research, we get into analysis and ideas, and then when we start understanding what our ideas are, we start to prototype them. And I want to point that out specifically because prototyping is a great way to is a great way to not have your application developers spend tons and tons of time coding things, building it in production or in dev or wherever you build. Instead, you can use Photoshop. You know, build a prototype on paper, you know, write down what the portal looks like and then put that in front of the user and say, you know, where would you go to find HR policies? And when they point at the paper, you can see if you have a great design or not. And that sort of thing, you can do that all yourself. You totally can. with an open platform. But I think, Kim, in most cases, people know what they want. Finding a portal that looks like most other portals is a great way to make sure that you don't have to train a bunch of people on how to use a portal. So I would love to get in touch with you, actually, Kim. Reach out to me on LinkedIn because I want to have this discussion further.
I love that, Matt. I think the only thing you mentioned something in your answer around the constraints. And I know, I've talked a little bit about the healthcare piece, but one other maybe analogy to use is if you have a 2.4 engine for all of you car fanatics out there, a 2.4 engine, you're going to be constrained by the horsepower and the torque and the turbocharging or the towing capacity. Now, I'm the grandson of a mechanic, Matt, so weird things I know. Okay, but so you can't expect that car to drive like a V8. It just will not do it. It has the steering wheel, it has all the basic things, but it will not drive like that V8 will. You won't be able to pick up and go the same way. So just making sure you have the right expectations aligned to the engine that you have. Okay. Let's go to one from Ashley, you think? We still have a little time here. So I love this one here. How do you incorporate the employee feedback and ESM design and redesign?
Love this. And if you've got survey fatigue like I do, then you know that you don't want to send another survey. One of the best ways to gather employee feedback is to simply listen to them. And this goes to your ticket information. When they're emailing in a ticket or they're using self-service on a ticket, or even when they're talking to your agents on the phone, they're giving you feedback in real time. It can be the language that they use. It can be the words that they say. It can be the way that they say it. And capturing that employee feedback is the first struggle. So make sure that you've got a system or an agreed to way to capture that information because you don't want to lose it. And then you should always be improving. Continual service improvement is a real deal. And when you're doing that continual service improvement, you need to go back to your designs. You need to go back to your processes, like Lee was saying, map them out. And when you're mapping them out, you're going to have gaps. You're going to have complaints. You're going to have customer complaints. Put those on that map. Show it in your process. You've got your process, and then down below you list, hey, everyone in HR complains about this thing. Sales reps in the field, they have problems with our ERP system because the internet is always slow. And whatever that feedback is, that's what you're going to. You're looking at your processes and you're visualizing that feedback so that when you're trying to innovate your processes or how they're implemented in a tool, you can see that feedback directly there and take action in your designs.
I love that. I don't have anything else to add to that, Matt. I think you did. You answered that question beautifully.
We got to get to Bert's question, though. It's a good one.
So will portals, go ahead. You can take it, Matt. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Will portals be relevant in a future state where agentic AI enabled chatbots will be available in Slack or Teams to ask any question relevant to your company and immediately addressed, whether that is by a direct answer pulled from a body of knowledge or a ticket immediately sent to the right person based on the context of the request? Or does that suddenly become the portal? Have you got thoughts on this one, Lee?
Yeah, I do. So whether or not it suddenly becomes the portal, I think it depends on the organization and the culture within the organization. Not all organizations, have a culture of leveraging Slack or Teams, so forth and so on. Sometimes very traditional organizations enjoy this a little bit more structured opportunity there, or more structured interfaces or portals. The other thing I think to consider would be, is it either or is it both and? And so I think it's both and. I think you will have much success with a certain population of folks who are pro technology and understand they're using some form of AI to answer their question, especially if the solution has really good containers and it's been built well. But you have this other portion of the population that will want to go to a portal, a traditional portal in air quotes there, and actually find the information. So it really just depends on the organization. Is it possible? Absolutely. Um, possibility, it doesn't always equal reality. So it depends on the org. But Bert, this is a great question, and I'm going to follow Matt's thing here. If you also connect with me on LinkedIn or have a calendar invite there, just put some time on my calendar and let's talk. I'd love to deep dive into this one with you specifically.
And he brings up a great question, or like
Yeah.
a subtext to the question, and that is around the body of knowledge part of the question. You know, this is why ESM needs to exist in the AI world. You can't have IT data over here and HR data over here and finance data over here and expect a unified response about, quote, something about your company. That's why I've got knowledge base at the bottom here. Having that enterprise knowledge base gives you somewhere to point a model to train on. It gives you a unified structure for that model to understand how your company works. And I'll say the same thing that I say to, I had a phone call yesterday with someone who's asking me, well, I really want to turn off email for tickets. I don't want to have email as a channel anymore. And I asked her, is that what your customers want though? And she said, yes. And I said, why don't you want it? She said, it's more expensive. It takes us more time. It takes the employee more time. There's more back and forth. They don't even know if someone's gotten their ticket or not. It's a bad experience. And I said to her, you get what you pay for. And in her case, she needs to bring that back to the customers and bring that back to the business. Do you want email support? And if you do, understand that it costs us more money. It costs you more frustration. It causes more frustration, costs us frustration, whatever. But the idea is that you give it back to the business. You give it back to the customers and you ask them, is this what you want? Is this what you want to pay for? And if the answer is yes, add it. If your company is in elder care and they're not really interested in agentic AI chatbots on Slack or Teams because the nurses are, all over the place, they're never sitting in one place, maybe you don't want to invest in that technology. So I hate the answer that it depends because every consultant is guilty of saying it, but the reality is it depends.
Oh my goodness. I love that. It does depend though. So the truth can only be the truth. I think maybe we'll take one more here, Matt. And I see here from Ashley, which metrics have provided the most actionable insights into improving service quality or efficiency?
I love this one. I
You want
love
to
it.
take it? Go ahead.
I do want to
Yeah,
take it. I
yeah,
really
go
do,
ahead.
because I hate metrics too. I'm also a staunch advocate against metrics. But the reality is that we do depend on them. We do depend on metrics, and usually to give employees bonuses or to improve services or just to do continual service improvement. And I think what you can do in this case is learn from each other, because IT has different metrics. They're all about uptime, which is great. We should totally focus on uptime because we need our stuff to be up. But in reality, the future world, we're going to build resilient systems. We're going to build self-healing systems. So is uptime even that important anymore? Well, I don't know, but the IT department knows. So you need to trust the IT department on that. Same thing with HR. Learn from their metrics and what they've been using over the years. And then below those individual levels where, IT and HR and finance and legal, they all have their own metrics that they really care about. Below that, you can identify new ones that matter to your employees. I highly recommend that you check out this concept of experience management. There is a adjacent thinking called XLAs. And if you're in IT, you've heard this phrase SLAs before, service level agreements. Well, XLAs are experience level agreements. And the beautiful thing about XLAs is that it is holistic, similar to ESM, similar to how, I've got an onboarding experience and multiple departments are delivering upon that experience. But if your XLA says, we want to provide a swift, clear, concise onboarding experience for new hires, that is a great metric, because you can say, was it fast? Was it concise? Was it enjoyable to that employee? And then everyone that's responsible along that chain of onboarding is responsible for reaching that metric. And when we don't meet that metric, when we fail that XLA, now we have an opportunity to learn along that chain. And we get together, we get our agile team together that focuses on onboarding, and we discuss it. We say, where did we fail? How did we let this person down? How did we let the hiring manager down? And you can have those open and honest conversations to then improve.
I love that, Matt. I mean, you're talking about the XLA, and my mind immediately went to like your SLAs. Originally, I was going to go down that path, and even on like first contact rates and like cost to serve, all of those things play a portion. I've also heard some and seen some articles. We think when we're serving our customers around CSAT, all right, and then when we're serving internally, there's also ESAT, that employee satisfaction component as well, that typically, we get that through surveys or feedback, but also a high ESAT score can correlate with better experience internally as well. And like, what are the types of questions we're asking or answering through there? I said this would be the last question, but I just want to highlight something here just so that we don't miss it. But just one of the questions that Ashley also asked was like, we referenced the school where costs can kind of halt technology investments. She asked that we share how we create a business case of, like where cost may have been a hard no. I'll just quickly say this. InvGate is a very cost efficient and system. It doesn't take, in many of our cases where we've helped customers, sell this thought of ESM internally, it did not take an act of Congress, especially when we think about the return on investment. And so we're happy to do a couple of things here. One, and Matt, if you go to the next slide, I think we have some free things involved here, right? So if you go over to the InvGate website, you can get a 30-day free trial, and we can get demos set up with our team or their team. So Matt is flipping between so that you can kind of see there. If you're interested in that, you can chat with us. You can schedule now. You can scan this QR code. In the words of Kim Possible, you can call me, beat me if you want to reach me. Okay, I'm dating myself. You can call me, beat me if you want to reach me, and we will find time to serve you, right? And make sure that you have the most information that you can in order to support and serve your team members. With that being said, Matt, any final words before I close this out?
No, I think the essential thing is that if this is interesting to you, if this is something that you're working on or working towards, there is a massive community of people that are also trying to work towards this or have succeeded in doing this. Reaching out to Lee and I can help you connect to the other people that have either solved this problem, are working on it currently, or you just want to have a discussion with someone. I think that's probably the most important thing, that you build your network. Build your network of people that you can leverage and understand their context and what's worked for them.
Perfect. And I'll close this with, I'm a quote master, if you will, Matt, but I think it was the words of Southwest Airlines that said, "We know you have many choices when you fly." Thank you for spending a few moments with Matt and I. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. See you later.